You often hear that in a person's last moments, they get a flashback of their life, of all their adventures, important moments that stand out, of people, of friends, of family, of enemies, of time, all your personal timeline seen in your eyes at the moments before you die. Lord knows I had ages for my life to flash before my eyes, seconds in fact. When I fell from the Pharos Project telescope, my life flashed before my eyes. This is what I thought whilst falling. He laughed that maniacal laugh. He was the devil. He was the master. Well, I say he was the devil. Of course, really, the devil is a fan of tweed and white fire. But the master, he was the definition of evil, dressed in gothic black and with a goatee. Goatees are the mark of all evil. Perhaps if he were to shave it off, he wouldn't be so evil after all. Only while that cable holds, said I, as I dashed out of the control chamber and out onto the telescope. The master followed. I lay trapped with my scarf, and the buffoon fell flat on his face. My objective was simple: save the Earth. Nothing changes. But to do that, I had to somehow reach a cable that was just beyond my reach. The master picked himself up. We skirmished, hand to hand, body to body, pushing at each other. I felt like I was Holmes, battling Moriarty atop of the Reichenbach Falls. It was never my intention to kill him, but I knew he'd happily knock me off the telescope. A fall to my death. Not a pleasant thought. I looked into the master's eyes, his stolen eyes. Treemass's eyes. I was so sorry for Nissa, her own father revitalized into evil, a butcher. He'd taken everything from her stepmother, her father, and then her entire planet. I pushed him away, and he dashed inside the telescope. He used the controls and caused the telescope to tilt. My balance was poor, and I nearly slipped off. I stared to the ground. Quarks! It was high. So high, in fact, that the ground became blurry. I held on to the telescope for dear life. Then I saw ahead. The cable! Disconnected, and everything would be all right. Idiotically, I looked down again. In the middle of the blurriness was a gleaming white figure, looking up at me. The Watcher. The more he lingered, the more I knew my life was forfeit. It's funny, but I always thought the Great Watchers only appeared when a Time Lord was on their 13th life and nearing death. I couldn't make sense of his presence. It only made sense if I was on my 13th life, but I was only on my 4th. Unless, of course, I had secret lives before the first. Those faces I saw battling Morbius, perhaps. But did it really matter? I'm the Doctor. That's all I needed to know. And at this moment, I was one false move away from falling off the side of a radio telescope and landing splat, dead. I picked up a tool I found by my foot and hacked away at the distant cable, hoping to dislodge it and save the day. I did always enjoy saving the day. Probably my favorite pastime. Whack, whack, whack. Success! The cable sparked and was let loose. I was temporarily blinded by the flash, and felt my two hearts leap and my body fall. I'd slipped from the telescope, and now I dangled. I dangled from the cable I'd just dislodged. Don't look down, I told myself. Instead, I looked straight on. My eyes were fixed on the horizon, on the light of the sun. It was a paralyzing sight. The beauty of the English countryside, with this noble traveller hanging, staring at it. I enjoyed the view for a bliss moment. Magnificent. Something dark awakened in my head as I felt the presence of the Master, looking down at me. The scent of evil seemed to emanate from him. Evil. I loathed evil. I'd fought it so many times, made so many enemies. Enemies who I now felt staring at me, taunting me, telling me to let go of the cable and stop dangling, telling me to fall. First, I saw Scratchman, leering at me. Fall, Time Lord, said he. Skagra came next. Let your mind fall, Doctor. Then the Master, the one who eagerly needed plastic surgery. Predictable as ever, Doctor. Stigron the Kral, Doctor will die. Reuben the Rutan, die, Doctor. Scaroth, Doctor. Dalek, Doctor. The Pirate Captain, Doctor. A Cyberman, the Cyber Leader. Davros, Sontaran, Zygon, Naimon, Soldeed, the Great Vampires, Sutek, Magnus Greel, Zoanon, Meglos, the Vox, the Wirren, Mandragora, Crinoid, the Swarm, the Fendal, all of them, all of my enemies, taunting me, telling me to let go, telling me to die, to let go of my hope, of my pride. They told me I was weak, and for a moment I believed them. For one moment I did. Then it was too late. Doctor, you shall die for this, screamed the Black Guardian. I slipped down the cable. I held on only by the end. I tried to swing myself to the scaffolding of the telescope for a bit of stability, instead of just swaying in the wind. My scarf turned rainbow in my hazy vision. I grabbed the scaffolding. That's all that lay between me and death. One piece of scaffolding. My muscles strained to keep me on the scaffolding. Holding on by two hands, my arm gave. One hand now. I told myself to be brave. Entropy increases. One hand. I was so strained, I couldn't hold on. I let go. Time seemed to stop around me as I fell. I braced myself for the immediate halt, but it wouldn't come. I fell so slowly. I could almost see the distant trees sway. That's how slow I went. Looking down at me from above was the Master. I couldn't tell if he was crying or laughing. I presume the latter, but I could hear nothing except the whirl of the wind rushing past my body. To anyone else, I'm sure my descent was an instant, but to me, it lasted an eternity falling, an existence I did not favor. As I fell, I came to imagine myself in a small sitting room, well furnished, warm with a great roaring fireplace. I felt myself leaning back into a leather sofa, confused about my surroundings, but also I felt a giddy nature. The TV blinked on. I heard music, great alien music. Oh, the sight of the television was wonderful. It was me. I was lying on the floor of Unit HQ, with Sarah Jane by my side. I'd just regenerated. I grinned as I watched. The screen showed me the whole adventure, from waking in Unit HQ, to locking the imbecile in the closet, to gaining my scarf. to battling the K1 robot. I watched the whole thing with glee. I had such style in the beginning. Now, I was a greying burgundy variant of my old self. I felt like I was an old, fine wine. I was getting better with age. Another story came on. The one with Nerva Beacon and the Willen. I watched it too. Then the next one, with the Centaur. I got a nasty injury from that one, as I remember. Then the next one came on. The Dalek one, with Davros. Do I have the right? I couldn't watch that bit. I felt disgusted by myself. Then the next one, Cybermen. How magnificent! In fact, as I fell, I watched them all. The Loch Ness Monster, the Mars one, the Eldrad one. Shed a tear at the end of that story. The Severtine, Victorian London, meeting K9, Sontarans on Gallifrey, the Key to Time saga, the Louvre, the Pit. I don't know why I blew into that creature's pit. Yes, well, let's just forget about that. E-Space, the Keeper, the Master. I watched them all, right to the end. Funny the things you do when you're falling to your death. What fantastic characters! What a sad man. The Doctor, ha! He can be a bit of a hero, but he's sad. Why is he sad? The Wanderer, the hero? No, he's not a hero, just a madman. The only cure for his insanity is his friends. I don't like showing emotion. I'm never good at it. I prefer acting the clown when the going gets tough. But now, the going had nowhere to go, and there was no outrunning destiny, and all I could do in my head was watch all my adventures on a rubbish old square TV. His friends, they were always there for him, protected him, loved him. I wondered what they were doing now. Romana was doing her best in E-Space. K9 was with her. Leela was on Gallifrey, no doubt getting into all types of trouble. Sullivan was working for UNIT. He had such a brain. I'm sure he was putting it to good use. Then there was Sarah. Oh, Sarah. I'm so sorry I didn't come back. But I know we'll meet again, and hopefully the gift I gave you will make up for my absence. Watching those adventures made me realize I'd had a long and good life. I'd seen so much, done more than I'd ever done before, met greater people than I possibly ever would again. I'd fallen in love with the universe, and I longed for it. I'd seen so much. I'd battled oppressors. I'd been a doctor. I'd been a doctor. I'd been the doctor. A fact I was proud of. Who else gets to be the doctor? No one. Just me. I got to be the doctor. That is my crowning moment. The sad, lonely traveller on the verge of a Great Depression that would make the universe cold. But the colours like in the scarf, revitalized by the love of his friends. They were the very best for me. I only hope I was the very best for them. I didn't even notice that I'd finished falling. I was on the ground. It was cold. The back of my head was split open. Death was ready for me, but I wasn't quite ready for it. My ears popped, the drums burst, and I was made deaf. I couldn't hear a thing. I just stared up blankly at the sun, and at the telescope from where I'd fallen. The Master would be gone by now. I'd lost. But maybe I'd succeeded. I'd shut down his signal after all. but I couldn't rest easy. The master was loose, but I couldn't rise. I was dying. This old body of mine was wearing a bit thin. The youngsters gathered round my soon-to-be corpse. I couldn't hear them, but I presume the word they all mouthed at me was "Doctor." First Tegan spoke, then Nissa, then Edric. They all said "Doctor." Doctor. That word gave me pride. My own mind seemed to reward me for that. I saw ghosts of others gathering around me on the ground. Sarah, Harry, Leela, K9 Mark 1, Anne, Joan, Tiger, Oliver, Naomi, K9 Mark 2, Romana, Romana 2, Jacob, Lightfoot, the Brigadier, Benton, and many others, who I'm not sure are canon or not, but somehow they still gathered here too. They all took it in turns to say, "Doctor." This doctor must have been a good old man. Once the last of them had said it, I felt at peace. Then their ghosts just faded away. I felt the Watcher's presence behind me. It had all been prepared for. I knew it was. I knew it was safe, and that every move I'd made had been preparing for this moment. Now I knew. I'd regenerate. I could feel it. This wasn't the end for me. In my head, I left a note for my future. Good luck. I used the last of my muscles to talk and hopefully relax my friends. It was painful, but I still managed to get the words out. I raised my broken arm up and beckoned to the Watcher. The moment had been prepared for. The moment was now. The Watcher took my place. It's the end, but the moment has been prepared for. His body became like a cocoon over mine. I regenerated. It's the end, but the moment has been prepared for. But then it stopped. I looked up, and the sun beamed down on my face. I raised my hand and felt my face. Nothing was different. The moment was no longer prepared for. And I watched as the Watcher walked into the distance, fading away. I rummaged through my pockets and grabbed a small mirror. I survived. Nissa then helped me up, and all three of my newfound companions were in shock. I jumped up and landed on my feet. I looked towards the horizon, and 3 unit soldiers were heading towards us. They were led by my old friend, Brigadier Alistair Gordon Lethbridge Stewart. This wasn't supposed to happen. Something was very, very wrong, and I have to find out who or what has prevented the moment from taking place.
Sat upon clouds of code, built on top of engines of equations, stands the key to my ultimate victory. Is in the theoretical spires of Legopolis. I shall win. I could make sure he survives that fated fall in Legopolis. To mess with something so intricate would create a paradox so gargantuan that it would create a dark dimension, one in which an ever-growing army could just happen to reside. The groundwork has been put in place and the change has been stopped. The curator, the bumbling old man, a late career doctor, has been sent to warn the fourth incarnation not to listen to warnings, to mete out his destiny as I shall mine. I propose that the fourth doctor would instead retire, cheating his fate and creating the paradox. It all leads to the Master giving me the entropy after destroying Megapolis. And then with that entropy, my rise to ultimate power shall truly begin.